Hello everyone, and welcome to Pixel and Grain again. Today we're going to be doing something that I've been wanting to do for quite a long time, and that is take some period correct or somewhat period correct cameras and photograph a 1940s weekend. Kind of test out some old cameras, some old tech, see how they perform. Do they stand up to sort of like the names of like Rolleiflex and other little folding cameras and stuff like that, or do you run into some issues? And word of warning, ran into some issues, some quite catastrophic issues actually. So yeah, vintage cameras are cool and everything, but if you're looking at shooting vintage cameras, there really are some things you should look out for, and also they're not getting any younger, and we incur many issues with these kind of tools as we're moving forward. So yeah, if that sounds fun, stick around, let's see how it went. So the whole idea and how this kind of came around in the first place is because I'm sure, like many of you, I'm adamant that I don't collect cameras, but I have so many cameras, and I don't even know how I have so many cameras. I think, well, I know a lot of them were gifted to me early on, I've bought other ones I found in charity shops or thrift stores and stuff like that. Maybe, I don't know. I'm really not a kind of person to kind of like trawl through eBay and try and find something like a little gem or something. I often just kind of forget about it. But that being said, I do have a lot of cameras, and a lot of these cameras are quite old, and some of them take 620 film and others take 120 film. Some of them take 35mm, but like I have a bunch of cameras that would be somewhat suited to this time period, maybe a little bit later than the 1940s, but still that kind of like the time before cameras became sort of like almost like standardized with a rangefinder and an SLR, kind of moving forward. Other than the 80s, where they had like quite a lot of experimentation with smaller formats, kind of like, I guess, like the 1950s and before that, it was such a weird and wonderful world of cameras. There were so many different sorts and different things, but by far two of the big popular types of cameras back then was a twin lens reflex with this Rolleiflex 3.5, and also this little Coronet folding camera. Let's start with the Rolleiflex. It's a big name, right? It's I think a lot of people are familiar with the Rolleiflex. Photographers like Vivian May are making kind of like, I think, this camera quite popular. And then also in the recent film Lee with Kate Winslet, she was like a Vogue photographer and ended up on the front line photographing the European front during World War II. And in that film, and famously historically, she used a Rolleiflex. Now, I don't think it was, I guess there's different tiers of them. I guess like, the wider the aperture, like a 2.8. I don't know like the creme de la creme of Rolleiflexes, but I know they're crazy expensive. But this is somewhat of a, I guess, a more of a modest model. But yeah, it's a Rolleiflex Automat, I think. Your standard 6x6, takes 120 medium format film. I think it has an 80mm lens on it. Maximum aperture of 500th of a second. Yeah, really nice, neat little camera. I think this one dates, I think the actual model is 1951, so we're talking 5 years after the war. But still, the earlier models, they look very, very similar. Has an interesting sports finder. When you push down on this lever, this lifts up, and there's actually a mirror at 45 degrees. And I can look through this, basically use it like a periscope, or I guess an SLR. Yeah, it's pretty dirty and it's not very clear, but the option's there. Apart from that, your standard sort of things. We've got manual focus, shutter speeds from bulb to 500th of a second, and that's about it really. I mean, it's an old mechanical camera. Now on the much more modest side, here we have a camera called a Coronet. This is a Coronet Rapide, and as you can see there, it's a little folding camera, shoots 120 film again, which is somewhat, maybe not rare, but more unusual for these types of cameras. But it does shoot 6x9, so when we say that, we mean 6 centimeters by 9 centimeters. But this is a really, really basic camera. It was made, I believe, in Birmingham, and I think this one dates back to the late 40s and then through into the 50s. But yeah, I found some things online stating that this was around like the late 40s, so I'm imagining 48, 49. But this has a single aperture and a single shutter speed, and it has like a large format type shutter where you have to cock it first. The shutter button here links up to this little kind of rod which actually triggers the shutter. They're the cameras we're using. As I alluded to at the beginning, we face some issues, kind of right off the bat actually. So as you can see in the footage, the first roll of film that I put in this Rolleiflex, as I was winding on, it wasn't winding the counter up. Now I have a couple of other twin lens reflex cameras, and they have the same thing where there's actually like a little, you can actually see in the back. I don't know how well you'll be able to see that, but yeah, up here there's like a little rod, and that actually twists, and there's some gears, some toothed kind of gears on the side there. As the film rolls across that, it actually twists that, and that's what gives your camera, I guess, the position of the film within the camera. So it rolls around a certain amount of times before it stops. Now, I was finding when I first got that, I was racking that film round, and it just went completely from one roll to the other. It didn't lock in, it didn't put me on frame counter 1, so that's what happened in this shot. I did something I hadn't ever actually done before, and it's because I was on, I guess, location, right? I had no other option. I put the 120 film in backwards, and I rolled it back up on itself, which, if any of you know 120 film, you understand that. Oh, let's just get a roll quick. So here's my dummy roll of 120, and as you get the film, this is the way it's supposed to go through the camera. Actually, no, is it? No, this is the wrong way. So the start of the film, as you pull it through the camera, has this tape on there, and the tape, as it pulls it through, keeps the film nice and flat against the paper as it rolls round. Now, if you put this through backwards, what you actually end up getting is the other end of the film going through first, and that does not have tape. So what you end up getting is this film being pulled through the camera like this, and it gets to the end, and then this bit wants to curl over, and what actually happened was this started to curl over inside the kind of the gate for the camera, which I knew was going to happen, but rather than just completely waste the roll, I decided to kind of perform surgery in the field and just admit to myself that it was a mistake, and just try and move on, knowing that the first probably 5 frames were going to be completely messed up. So next up was loading the little Coronet. Now, thankfully, this is an incredibly simple camera, both in operation, in terms of taking photos, but also loading. It's like any other folding camera where you just insert the film on one end, you pull it across, and then as you wind the film on, you just look for the little window in the back, and you just have to manually stop when you see the number 1. And if you go too far, tough luck. There's no winding a film back. So yeah, with this camera loaded, I went for a little walk, and I kind of spotted this Spitfire just in the middle of the field, and then I noticed this like little American depot, kind of like, I guess it looked like almost like a makeshift garage type thing. They had a bunch of vehicle parts and stuff, and it had quite a lot of character, so I thought that's a good place to start. So looking at these first images from this little Coronet camera, I'm really impressed by them. I mean, there's a certain amount of focus drop off on the edges. Another thing with these cameras is because they're bellows, and you know, they fold out like this, you have to make sure they're fully locked in position, because, you know, one, there's no focus in screen, and you can't focus through the viewfinder. But I mean, this camera in particular has no focus in whatsoever, so you're really relying on the math to be correct for, you know, this camera as it's been fully deployed. So yeah, I think maybe some of those slightly blurry shots and slightly kind of like, it looks like the focal plane is cutting across the image rather than being flat. Maybe that was because the lens was just ever so slightly not locked in place properly. But by and large, the images I think look quite nice. The lens is, I mean, it's not super sharp obviously, but it has quite a nice contrast to it. There's not a lot of haze to it, and to be honest, I was surprised. I was running Kodak 400 Tri-X through these, and yeah, I thought 400 speed film in a camera this old was going to be way too much, but really they look only to be about a stop overexposed to me. You know, and that's always good for film. You always want to overexpose it. If you have to err on the side of caution, you want to go with the overexposure. But after sort of taking a picture of this like still life scene, I really wanted to start taking photos of some people. There was so many people dressed up, and I went over to these guys. I think they were dressed as desert rats. They had all the North African campaign British kind of garb on. So, mind if I grab a picture? Yeah. Not you, Daisy. Lovely. Thank you. The kind of problem with this event is it's cool having the people to be able to take photographs of, but you're in the English countryside, right? I live in Norfolk. It's a very rural county, so at least it's not like super built up, and there's loads of things that are obviously out of time. But, you know, these guys, for example, I mean, they're dressed up in North African campaign clothes, yet, you know, we're sat in this nice lush green field of a small English town in the countryside. So I really tried to frame my shots where there wasn't too much detail in the background. I really tried to cut out, obviously, cars and people in modern clothes, but it's quite difficult. And, you know, in the background I think you can see some pine trees and things like that, which I don't know whether they would have been there, but still, you know, it's just one of those things where you have to kind of understand where you are. But I think my goal going through this video was very much to try and take a photograph of something that could be somewhat believed to be from the 40s. So like the shots of the like the vehicle in the depot, close-up shots of the tents and the cots and the equipment in the tents, and close-ups of the vehicles, you know, something where it's not super obvious. You don't want like a a Ford Focus in the background, right? But anyway, yeah, so I saw these two guys and I asked them for a photo. I'll just come around here and get another shot because the sun's out now. Authentic sandwich packet. I'll just get another one. Come here. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And in that second one, you could really see that focus drop off. I don't really know why, but the guy, the second guy, is really out of focus, and I think it doesn't look like motion blur because it's not directional. It's very much just soft focus. And I think what happened in that situation was maybe the camera wasn't fully open, or maybe one of these arms didn't get locked in, and the lens was tilted slightly, which was causing a sort of a strange focus fall off. But still, like, you know, it does kind of look like it, doesn't it? These kind of like almost rushed photos. Yeah, it's quite cool. So next up, the Rolleiflex. Right now, I'm over the moon because this camera has adjustable settings. So I treated myself, I got my light meter out, I metered everything, and I thought this is going to be brilliant. Knowing full well that roll of film was in the camera, and remember, this film wasn't lock-in either. So I really overcompensated for how much I was moving on. I had no idea how far to move the film on. How's it going? Might just grab a couple of pics if that's all right.
Where do you want this?
Oh, just there will be absolutely perfect. I'll grab a few. Right, if you come this side, Daisy. Good girl. Sit. Good girl. Right there.
You stab one.
So you can see just so much light leak from the overexposure of the film. Actually on the contact sheet, if you have a look at this, you can actually see the word Kodak imprinted on the film itself. Now that must just be from the light just hitting the back of the film and actually imprinting the numbers, the branding of the paper onto the film itself. So, you could tell that the film was being exposed where it definitely should not be being exposed. But I persevered, like I said, I knew this kind of roller film was toast, but rather than just ripping it out and wasting everything, persevere with it, just shoot through the roller film and check it out. So here is the final contact sheet, and you can see all the damage from this as well, right? You can see all the light leak from the start of the roller film up until each image starts to get a little bit clearer in terms of the fogginess, just because the overexposure is just sort of like starting to go away, because this is now film that was tucked away safely inside the rest of the roller film. So after that roller film, I went over to like another little area. And I just wanted to see if I could work out why the counter wasn't working properly. And I don't know whether this is the reason why it worked, but unlike other TLRs that I have, this one has like not just the first roller here, which helps the film obviously move across the corner of the camera to come off the roll. There's also a second roller here, and I actually fed the film through that, where if we took the end of this film here, I kind of put it through. So there was a roller on the top, and I did that before I started winding it on to the back of the spool in the camera. Now, I really don't know what the purpose of these two rollers are, but it worked. I rolled I cranked the advance lever, and it stopped at frame 1, and I thought, okay, we're in business. We now have arguably a fully working Rolleiflex, albeit maybe just the standard issues that you get with these cameras, like the slow shutter speeds at the low end and stuff like that. But by and large, this camera was working. It might have worked. Now, as you can see here, there's again, this whole thing of trying to cut out all the really modern things from the photograph. But it was quite difficult, and actually, in one of the shots, I didn't actually register at the time, I don't think. There's just a bunch of cars. I think you can just see a giant Renault logo just right there. And then some van with just his business just plastered on the side or something like that. But yeah, it's just one of the things with film. You get back, you develop it, and you realize your mistakes. But it is film. If you want it to be perfect, shoot digital. So as I was walking around, I kind of realized that that car park was really prominent on that whole back row of kind of the tents and stuff that had been set up. So anyway, I moved back to that American depot. It was quite a nice little setup area, and there's lots of little areas where I could frame things without other things being in the background. And plus, I hadn't got any shots on the Rolleiflex at this point, so I was very happy that I could now focus properly and compose properly and select a shutter speed that would, hopefully give me the right exposure, Some of these shots look quite characteristic of sort of like a photojournalistic type composition of the war. Now, obviously, maybe I'm looking at it through a modern lens, and I'm kind of imagining that film Lee in my head. I guess it's the closest thing I have to photojournalism in the Second World War. Obviously, we got big names like Robert Capa and these people who landed on the beaches of D-Day and all these kind of things. But I think personally, when I think of photojournalism and war photography, I tend to think of the Vietnam War, really, and onwards. I think the Vietnam War was the first war where photojournalists were just allowed like frontline access, and some of the imagery, like Don McCullen's work, to come out of the Vietnam War is just incredible, and just such an eye-opening part. It's hard to describe in it. It's like an eye-opening. It's awful, these the stuff that war photography covers, but it's a difficult topic, isn't it? Should you photograph war? Should you enjoy or appreciate a photograph that was captured during conflict? But then it's like, well, without that image we wouldn't know what actually happened, and we wouldn't feel inspired to make change and all that kind of stuff. That's probably a bit of a deeper topic, but I kind of the image of the German helmet on the truck, obviously I didn't put that helmet there or anything like that. This is a choice by someone else, but because I just come across it, I decided to photograph it. And to see a German helmet, and maybe I should explain that it's a German World War II helmet on the American truck. So it's a bit dark because it's like a trophy, right? So yeah, that's quite interesting, and I quite like that. Not that I'm saying it's a perfect photograph, but I think it's starting to hit that brief of what I originally set myself, which was to just try and capture something that looks a little bit like it could be shot within the 40s, and there's nothing really glaringly obvious that would say that was taken in 2025. It was at this moment where the real catastrophe hit, and the real reason why when I say shooting with old cameras is a bit of a gamble is because this Rolleiflex just suddenly jammed up, and I was on, I think, frame 9 or 10, and I wasn't too sure what had happened. I didn't know whether the shutter hadn't engaged properly, or I really couldn't tell what was wrong with it. Everything was just jammed up to the point where nothing worked. I'd push the shutter in, nothing worked. I'd crank the handle, nothing would work. Changing the shutter speeds and all that kind of stuff really did nothing. So it was really frustrating. And I hate to say it, but the cameras actually still like it. I haven't managed to figure it out. So I made the painful decision to stop shooting on this camera, because unlike the first roll of film where it was right at the start and I'd already made a mistake and I knew the film had been exposed, and you just persist and you carry on. This roll of film I'd captured, I knew like up to 9 like good images, ones that I had properly composed and exposed for. So I made the decision to just not use it anymore, which was really unfortunate because I was looking forward to using this camera so much. But that's what you get when you shoot with these old cameras. This, say it's from 1951, we're talking over 70 years old, and quite potentially have never been serviced ever. And unfortunately, I think all these shutters, in the manuals they say they need to be serviced within a certain amount of time, you know. So there's a reason why they kind of stop working, you know. They're so gunked up with old grease and stuff like that, that if you find a camera online that you really like the look of, and you know, even if it fires on a shutter speed, just keep in mind that these are super old tools, and yeah, a lot of the times they haven't been serviced. Not that you can't get them serviced, because you absolutely can, but you just have to, you know, put that into your budget. Don't think that you can buy a Rolleiflex or a Leica or other big brand or reputable cameras, you know, even if it's a simple or maybe a more modest camera like a Nikon or a Canon camera, you know, just remember they are old machines. And just before we move on to the little Coronet folding camera shots, I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that I had this like realization looking at the contact print of the roll of film that I just shot, and the roll of film that was trapped inside the camera. And after developing it and scanning it and seeing that digital contact print on my screen, I had a realization that this may well be the last roll of film to ever be shot on this camera. And you know, as someone who really kind of like respects and loves like my cameras and tools, and you kind of learn to rely on them, and I love investing in good equipment. Yeah, just a little side note, bit sad, but you know, I guess everything has to die eventually, right? But moving on with the little Coronet, I saw the Spitfire, and I think seeing it from the other side, I was like, actually, yeah, that's look quite cool. There were some buildings in the background, but to be honest, these buildings are probably date back way before World War II anyway, you know. Just want to mention as well, actually, I've decided to leave the frame lines in on these images because with nearly every camera I've shot, I think maybe every camera I've shot, I've never seen the image get imprinted onto the markings of the film, the frame numbers and the film stock and the company that made it. You know, maybe I've seen that from a malfunctioning camera, but this seems to be very much just the position that the film sits inside the camera, and also the gate itself. So rather than being like a really perfectly 90-degree cornered square or rectangle, it's rounded, you know, and it has that aesthetic to it, that really cool sort of like old-timey sort of like before real standardization of certain elements, you know. I think it just adds a lot of character to the shots. So then moving on, I just kind of like walked around the whole site, and I just took these shots. There was a lot of vehicles there, and I just got some close-up shots of that. But really, I burnt through that roll. I burnt through those 8 shots quite quick, probably within about 10 minutes. It can be quite expensive to be putting Kodak Tri-X or Kodak Tmax through a 6x9 camera at the best of times, if it was a very fancy Fuji 6x9 camera or whatnot. But especially when you're putting it through a 70-year-old point and shoot camera that you can't focus, you can't select the shutter speed, and you can't select the aperture. It's quite an odd feeling to just burn through a roll of, you know, like 12-pound roll of film. But you know, it's the way it goes, I guess. But towards the end of the roll of film, I ended up by the train station, and the steam train was just about to leave, so I got a couple of shots. Unfortunately, I mean, I can crop this like this, so it just got the guy in there, and you know, theoretically, it being a 6x9 image, we should have plenty of resolution to crop in on. But you know, again, lens quality, all that kind of stuff, those factors do come into it. But still, I got this kind of like nice shot of the steam coming up from the bottom of the train and kind of obscuring this guy. I quite like that shot, and then just had another shot of the train before it left the platform. But yeah, that was the end of that roll of film. But by this point, I sort of like felt like I'd photographed everything I'd wanted to photograph at this little area. Now, The actual event, the 1940s weekend, is actually spread over many locations, but its kind of like base of operations, I'd say, is in the town called Sheringham on the North Norfolk coast, and this is kind of like where the hub is, and the train, that train in the photograph actually goes off to various stations, and each station participates. So I headed back on the bus, got in my truck and drove the 10 minutes to Sheringham, and had a little look around there to see what I couldn't see. So again, we'll have 8 shots, 8 painful shots. Oh, I can hear the train. There we go. Okay. Probably still going to take the Rolleiflex for the look. I mean, I guess this is like 1940s LARPing, right? Now, when I got to Sheringham, arrived at the train station, and it was kind of apparent that this was way more busier than the previous place that I'd been at, and that whole thing of trying to crop in or, you know, compose an image that's a bit tighter so I don't get modern things in the background just suddenly became a lot more difficult, because, you know, we now had people just walking around the streets in normal clothes as well. But we're also in a town, right? And while Sheringham is an old town and there's a lot of old buildings and it's quite a, you know, quaint village, it does have modern shops, you know, so you got modern things in the windows, and that was something I had to be really aware of. But the train station itself, other than the guy that told me I couldn't go in because I didn't have the right wristband.
If you've got a blue wristband, you can't come in here, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Have you got a wristband? Yeah.
He was very sure that I couldn't go in. I think even if I could go in, there wasn't a lot going on there at that particular time. And again, right next to a car park. Why are all these things next to car parks? You know, I can see a Harley in the shot, and I can see about 3,000 buses. So yeah, I knew it wasn't going to work. So I decided to walk into the town and just sort of try and find people, various things going on, and just, again, trying to adhere to that shooting tight and trying to isolate my subjects and not try and get as much in the background. And I come across these 2 guys, and they just looked awesome, so I asked them for a photo. Can I take a picture of you 2 gentlemen? That looks great. No worries at all. Perfect. Thank you so much. Oh yeah. Next issue, I'll tell you. I can't hear exactly what he said, but it was like, at the end he mentioned Vogue magazine or something, but as I walk away you can just hear, you know, old geezer just shouting like in the background. It's heartwarming. So from that point, kept meandering through town, and I came across this nice little composition. I managed to get one photo of this guy leaning against the fence with the signal box in the background, and then I went forward to go get my other shot, and he left just before I took the shot. So as I walked a little bit deeper into town, a convoy of American vehicles were just leaving, and I managed to capture this shot, which I thought was quite cool. It has that sort of like motion blur to it, and I think I actually managed to track it just enough where, you know, the guy's in focus and the actual vehicle's in focus, but of course you got the motion blur of the shop in the background and the woman and the spinning wheel, of course, and that was just completely by chance. You know, I have no idea what shutter speed the camera was at, and I'm surprised it kind of came out all right. And also I really like the fact that the American flag is at like full like flagginess. Yeah, I just think it's kind of cool. Got bit of character to it. So just after that, I was walking down and I saw this guy, and he looked a little bit unhappy. I don't know whether or not his Will's Jeep had broken down, but yeah, he looked a bit grumpy. But it was perfect for me because he was ripe for a photo. And again, it was one of these moments where someone's preoccupied, someone's doing something, and you know, there's so much going on that you can really go into that street photography mode, right? And snap a couple of pictures. And it was just, it looked great. I loved the composition of I loved him just seeing to things on the Jeep and stuff, and you had the 50 cal machine gun on there, so it had this like big sort of like dominating presence, and kind of like it was you know, these guys were ready for war or something like that, and he's like loading all this stuff in there. So I managed to capture a few images of this guy. Maybe not the greatest of compositions, and maybe I could have got slightly, I wish I'd have got slightly more facial expression from him. He wasn't taking any attention, he wasn't paying any attention to me. But yeah, I kind of wish I had that contact, you know, that visual, or maybe just something a bit better. But still happy with the images I got, and I think it turned out all right. I also quite like this photo as well. If you couldn't tell, someone shouted in the crowd that like soldiers were coming through, or the troops were coming through. They were quite broken up, but there was a lot of uniformed people walking up the street, and of course the crowd, it was just such a busy little street, so someone was shouting for them to move out of the way, and I grabbed this shot, and I quite like it for some reason. I quite like the guy on the right hand side of the frame, they kind of like looking back, and it just has like, it's got quite a lot of movement to it, and it's one of the difficult things about taking photographs of people, that is, if you're doing street photography and you just capture a moment, you know, most of the times people are unaware, or if they are, it's kind of like at the moment where they just become aware. And you know, there's a discussion about street photography and the moral, you know, whatever that is, you know, do you ask for permission and all that. For this, I mean, this is fair game, right? This is just, they've dressed up, they've gone out, and they know people are going to take photographs of them. However, the thing that happens with that is people kind of like, they smile at you, and you know, you go, oh, can I take your picture? And they either do like a really sort of like a kind of like tough guy army pose, or they'll smile. And you know, it's natural, but like when you're trying to take photos that seem like they could have been taken in the 40s, you don't want that. And I think that this is a perfect moment where I managed to capture something where, you know, no one's smiling, other than, I guess you got three people, maybe the guy, the three people in the background, other than the policeman. They're all dressed in modern clothes, but I don't think they're too distracting. But still, I like the fact that they're all in such relaxed positions, you know. Rifle over his shoulder. One guy's got his hat, his helmet, in his hand, you know, while he's wearing his canvas hat. And the other guy is sort of turning around to look at someone else, and it just feels a bit more natural, and that's something I was hoping to capture on the day. So from this point, after I saw those guys, and all the scouts went past, maybe they were the troops coming through actually, but once they'd gone past, I walked down the street and I really couldn't find anything, and I had one shot left at this point, one shot in my camera, and I thought, I don't just want to take a picture of anything, you know, I want to make sure that it's a picture of them I think can be quite good. But there was nothing going on, and I was trying to find, and this is now getting to like dinner time, people are in the pubs, there's just people having dinner and stuff like that, and people are winding down for the day, for the whole, like, you know, reenactment thing. So I end up going back up the street, and the guy with the Jeep was still there. So yeah, I took another photo of him, and I really like the way it came out. I think it might actually be my favourite photo from the day. I don't think it's the best composed image in the world, but I think it definitely has something about it. I think the fact that there's just a lot of elements that I like about it, and again, this element of sort of like timelessness, the fact it could have been taken in the 40s. I love the bunting going across the streets. I love all the old buildings and stuff. I can't see anything that's overtly modern in that photograph. Even all the people in the background are kind of in 1940s dress, you know. Yeah, it all looks pretty good. I think the only thing maybe would be the double yellow line on the right hand side of the street, and maybe even the pavement itself. Maybe that wouldn't have been like that during the 40s, but you know, by and large, like, you know, these are things you can't control. It's how it is. But yeah, I quite like it. I think it's quite a nice photo. Yeah, so it's probably my favourite one from the day. Oh, and the eagle-eyed of you, if you were counting the shots I showed you from that previous... Oh, and the eagle-eyed of you, if you were counting the shots from when we loaded that last roll of film, you might have noticed that I only shot 7 shots. And that's because... one shot is of me, and I'll show you the contact print now. But one shot's of me, a young boy, and his granddad. His granddad called him over to have a look at my camera because you know, I guess he was sort of saying, this is how cameras used to be, and this is how photos were taken, blah blah blah. And the little boy took a real interest in the equipment, so I let him take a photograph, and he chose to take a photograph of me. So I don't know if they'll ever see this video, but yeah, there's your photograph, mate. You know, nicely composed. Actually, you know, to be fair, you managed to. I'm directly in the middle of the frame. And the fact that I'm blurry isn't anything to do with you. It was the camera. You know, it's just cameras they can only be so close, and these old cameras can't be too close. But other than that, mate, you got a nice steady hand. There's no motion blur, so you did a good job. And one more thing before we close out, I just want to thank my dog Daisy. She was in this video. She was with me the whole day, and she was just the best behaved dog. So I just want to give a thanks to Daisy, my German Shepherd, because she was wonderful. So closing thoughts. Old cameras are unreliable. Be careful. Don't think that you can pick up a camera that's 70 years old and it performs like a camera that's 20 years old or 10 years old or whatever. But, you know, you cannot deny the absolute charm that comes from these photographs. You know, you would never be able to replicate, or if you could replicate it, you know, of course you can, but it would be a lot of work to replicate the exact look from these old cameras. And if you're trying to replicate a time period type photo, my advice would just be photograph it on a camera from that time, because that's just going to give you the look you're going for. You know, with what film stock you use and all that kind of stuff is a different question, but still, you know, it's definitely fun to try out. And if you can, you know, these types of cameras are so cheap at charity shops and on eBay. I'm pretty sure you can pick one of these up for about 20 quid. But if you do pick it up, make sure you try and find one that takes 120 film and not 620 film. It's the same sized, physically the same size bit of film. It's just the spool that changes. 120 is still available and 620 is not. So yeah, I guess that'd just be my little word of advice. Although you can re-spool the 120 onto the 620 spool, and maybe I'll cover that in another video, because that might be quite fun. So anyway, thanks for watching Pixel and Grain. I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, I guess we'll see you next time.